What's going on, guys? Mr. Domo here, back at it again. So I got another unboxing video for you guys. These are some graded action figures from Collector Archive Services. They recently just got graded by them, and this literally just came in through the door like a few minutes ago. So let me just show you what I got. These are I guess you could say these are vintage, but they are the Disney Star Wars Star Tours PVC figures that released at the theme parks. Now these are unarticulated figures, so let me just show you what I got so far. So the first one here is, of course, I got a Stormtrooper that recently got graded. They're really nice looking. The next one here is Chewbacca. Put that guy there. Also, I got a Yoda. Next figure here is Wicket, and of course this is based on Ewoks, which was a toy line that came out right after the last 17 when they did Ewoks and droids, and that was by Kenner. And of course, you guys know that I'm doing a focus collection on my droids, you know, R2D2 and of course C3PO, so I had to get them graded. And so here is R2D2 with his partner right there, C3PO. So I got all these guys just recently graded by Collector Archive Services. So let me take them out of their poly bags, and then we'll discuss a little bit more about these figures. And then of course another company that tried to, well, they pretty much mimicked these, and that was a Comics Spain company that did them. And then of course, you know, Polish, there's some Polish bootlegs based on that. So let me just go ahead and do that, get them out of their poly bags, and then that way we could take a closer look at these awesome action figures. Alright guys, so there they are, they're out of the poly bags, and like I said before, these are Star Wars Star Tours figures, PVC figures that was released by Disney, not by Kenner, but by Disney. And so if you guys want to wear, Star Tours was a ride back in Disneyland, and so I don't even know if they have it now. It's been years since I've been to Disneyland, and the one I'm talking about is in California. And so they had this ride called Star Tours, excuse me. And so like you would go and you would pretty much, it was one of those rides where it was just a room, and you were like seated in front of a screen, kind of like in a movie theater. And then of course the room was like jacked up on hydraulics, and so like the room would shake and all of that while you're watching the film. And so the interesting part about the ride, it was a really cool ride. It was like going through a scenario in Star Wars, but literally right after the ride, you would exit from the ride, and the exit would literally take you into the gift shop of Star Tours. And so that's where these figures came from. So it was like a little Disney shop there, but everything was based on Star Wars stuff. And so Star Tours, they had their own stuff, and that's where these figures came from. Now, which is interesting is that there are some that are stamped with 1986. They're all country of origins, all made in China, so their country of origins all China. But what's interesting is that some of these figures are dated as 1986, and then but they didn't get released until 1990. And then the newer figures that were made 1990 and on are all stamped 1990 and 1993 and so forth. So so there is kind of like a weird, you know, date stamp with these figures, because as you'll see, these mostly are all stamped at 1990, and so they'll have a date stamp on the figures of 1990 or 1993. But of course, I'll show you one, the C3PO is actually date stamped at 1986, but it didn't release until like 1990. I don't know why they just made, I don't know if they just had like a whole bunch, like they just stocked up and then they released them in 1990. I don't know why they were stamped so early but not released until later on. So let me just show you the figures. So the first one here is Yoda, really cool, and like I said, these are PVC figures, so they're pretty much a solid piece. There's no articulation to them, but the paint is really nicely done. I love that. Here's the back side of them, and of course, you know, they will do, usually they have their stamp either on the foot or on behind the arms and so forth. But this one, like I said, country of origin is China, and this is a 1990, and I'll show you the label. So this is a 1990 Disney Star Wars Star Tours PVC figure Yoda, and he received an 80 score, so overall score was an 81.1, so really good score. And like I said, there's, you know, minor paint loss and paint rub and so forth, so really cool figure. So there's Yoda. And then the next one here, of course, this is based on Ewoks. Now, of course, after the last 17 figures from Kenner, there was a cartoon series of, based on Ewoks, and then there was one on droids, and then of course Kenner did the figures for that. And of course, this is one of them. And actually, they made more characters. There's more characters based on Ewoks than anything else. So here's one of them, and this is Wicket. But so this is a 1990 Disney Star Wars Star Tours PVC figure, Wicket, and he received a 90. So his overall score was a 90.4. So really great. And of course, you can't see any paint rub or anything like that. So they age pretty well, actually. So there's the back end, really nicely done. And of course, like I said, at the bottom you'll have their little stamp there. So this one doesn't have the date, but it does have the made in China country of origin on it. So there's that one. There's Wicket. The Stormtrooper, this guy, he does have a little bit of scuffs and stuff like that. And, he didn't age that well, but Stormtroopers don't really age that well, the figures, just because they're all white and everything like that. So they're prone to get more easily dirty than any other figures. But here's a Stormtrooper, very interesting. And then I don't know why, but they colored the top end gray, which is very interesting. But let me show you the label here. So this is another 1990 Disney Star Wars Star Tours PVC figure, Stormtrooper, and he received an 80 plus, so not a bad score, really good. Overall score was an 83.7, but as you can see, there's a little scuff marks there and there. So that's just, it kind of just goes with, when a Stormtrooper is all white and everything like that. But really nicely done, cool figure. And I think at the foot here, I don't know if you guys could see that, but it does have 1990, and of course this one right here is made in China. So really cool figure. Now I'm gonna talk about the droids later, but let me just go to Chewbacca. Chewbacca is really cool. I love his he's got very interesting eyes there, but this is Chewbacca. And of course, this is another 1990 Disney Star Wars Star Tours PVC figure, Chewbacca, and he received a really good score, 90 plus. So that's a 93.6 score overall, and this is Chewbacca, and he aged really well, but of course, Chewbacca's do. And he does have another stamp down here at the foot. Like I said, he does have 1990 made in China, so that's his country of origin, but really cool. And he's got his pouch there and everything like that, so really cool figure. So the droid, and I kind of wanted to save him for to talk more about them. Now, like I said, these were released, like in 1990, so they'll have, either a stamp of 1986 or 1990. Now, during that time, Comic Spain, which was a different company, not official licensed company by Kenner or Disney or anything like that, so it's kind of like a bootleg company, pretty much copied the exact figures that you see here. Now, I don't believe they did a Chewbacca or a Stormtrooper, or Yoda. They really focused on Ewoks and droids. So they pretty much copied R2-D2, C-3PO, and then all the Ewoks that were released during that time. Now, which is interesting is that they could pretty much get mixed up, and even myself, I'm looking everywhere and I'm trying to figure out, like, how do you tell the differences? So the one thing about the Comic Spain, which is pretty much a bootleg that was made, in Spain, is that they're slightly bigger than the official release of these Disney figures, and then also the color app is way different. So let me show you this R2-D2. So here's R2-D2. Like, again, this is a Disney Star Wars Star Tours figure, and I'll show you the label. So this is a 1990 Disney Star Wars Star Tours PVC figure, R2-D2. He received an 85, so really great score for this guy. So one of the differences that you could tell, like I said, the Comic Spain will be a little bit larger than these Disney figures. And then one thing about the R2-D2 is that they gave them, the Comic Spain gave them 2 green panels on the side, and then the top eye is usually yellow, and so that's how you could tell the difference. Now, which is interesting, of course, these are Disney. Comic Spain made their copy of it, which is kind of a bootleg, and then a bootleg off the bootleg is the Polish bootlegs of the Star Wars Star Tours figures. And so this is the one that I did a trade with the action figure grader, and so he had this one, and so like I was like, hey, we'll trade figures and everything like that. But this right here is a Polish bootleg. As you can see, this is a 1990s Polish bootleg Star Wars Star Tours R2D2. Now they pretty much almost copy the same thing. As you can see, the top eye is yellow, but they didn't, I think they, yeah, so they did do it. So here on the side, just like the Comic Spain, they did the two green side panels. And so that's how you could tell the difference between the Disney and the Comic Spain. And of course the Polish bootleg is just a little bit more raggedy looking. You know, it's a bootleg, so it just looks a little bit more raggedy. But as you can see, that's the difference. And then you can tell the Disney here on my right is actually a little bit smaller than the Polish bootleg, but the Polish bootleg pretty much copied what the Comic Spain did back in the late 80s, early 90s. Now, same thing with this guy right here. So this is C-3PO. Now this is kind of like the original release of the figure from Disney, and I'll show you the label here. So as you can see, this guy is a 1986 Disney Star Wars Star Tours, his hand gets in the way, PVC figure, you know, C-3PO, and he received an 85 plus, a really great score. But as you can see, the rest were all 1990s. This guy is a 1986, but he didn't get released until the 90s, but he's pretty much the first production. These guys are kind of like the second production. Like I said, the original ones all have a stamp of 1986, and then after that they remade them, and they all have the stamp of 1990 or 1990 on, or 1993 or on. And so this guy right here is the original release. Now there's now this guy's interesting because the Comic Spain pretty much copies this figure, of course, you know, off of the droids here, you know, cartoon series. But the one difference is that they gave them green eyes. Okay, so like he won't have silver eyes, and then also you see a little silver right at the kind of like at the armpit right there. So the Comic Spain are mostly one solid color, and they have two colors. Now Disney came out with two colors also, so you have this kind of brownish bronze color, and then when they re-released it, they gave them more of a metallic bronze color. So this brown kind of like poopy color right here, this is the original release. And then when they re-released it again with the date stamp of 1990, they gave it a more metallic bronze. Now the Comic Spain has their own two colors. They have one where it's more gold, but solid gold. There's none of that trim there under the armpits. And then of course they made one with yellow color to kind of assemble the droids figures that came out from the cartoon series droids. And then there's a couple of different ones. You know, there's different variants between the Comic Spain. I believe like back here in the back of his head, this is either painted gold or it's not painted, and then the two cables right here exposed, those are painted or not painted. So I do have one. I do have one that is gonna get sent out to collector archive services, and so when it gets back, I'll kind of show you the differences. It's kind of hard explaining it. It's better to kind of show it. But as you see right here, again, I'm just missing the Comic Spain version, but as you can see, these are the differences. So pretty much the Polish is just the bootleg of the bootleg from Comic Spain, and it's Comic Spain copied the Disney release. But that's pretty much it. You know, these are the guys that just literally came in today from Collector Archive Services. And of course, every time you get figures graded by Collector Archive Services, excuse me, you do get their kind of like statement of archival. So that's kind of cool. So I have all the figures in here, and that's just kind of, it's a nice added bonus when they do this. So, you know, it just gives you an overall brief statement of the figure that just graded. So, but that's pretty much it. Hopefully that wasn't confusing. And so if you have any questions, just hit me up in the comments below. But that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.